Good morning and welcome to this episode of V for Vegan. Thank you for joining us in this debate. Your voice is important, so please feel free to reach out to discuss any topic. I encourage you to read the book 14-Day Vegan together with recipes. Become a sponsor, like, or simply refer a friend or anyone you believe needs to change their diet in this episode. We will explore the moral conflicts exposed by food choices, morality and food. Animals often cooperate with others of their own species, but the way humans do so is different. The human form of cooperation, simply as morality, distinguishes itself in two related ways. One person may help another based on unselfish motives, driven by compassion, concern, and benevolence. Also, members of a group might seek means for all to benefit through enacting norms to promote fairness, equity, and justice. These capacities evolved over hundreds of thousands of years as humans began to work together out of a basic need for survival. The cognitive and social aspects of this process may be understood through the philosophical concept of intentionality, the ways individuals interpret the world and pursue their goals. We all have morals, including Hitler, who was contemptuous of meat-eaters, a self-proclaimed vegetarian, and a militant protector of animals. He was also a devoted son, devastated when his mother died. Often tagged criminal of the century, Gestapo in chief Heinrich Himmler was responsible for running all Nazi concentration and extermination camps. He was also a die-hard vegetarian, fervently opposed to hunting. Such facts are hard to fathom. They show that the central moral philosophy and psychology question is not whether some have morals and others don't. The real questions are: what kind of morals? What are they made of? Where do they come from? And, more importantly, what holds them together despite blatant inconsistencies? In the case of Hilter, it is reported that meat gave him gas, and he switched to becoming a vegetarian to rid himself of the bloat, all part from the liver dumplings he loved, because they reminded him of his mother. In our minds, we are impersonators of whom we represent ourselves to be, not only for others, but also for ourselves, always fearful of being debunked as imposters or fakes. We do care about our reputation, the reputation of being consistent for ourselves and for others in what we think, feel, and do. In caring about our reputation, we do create values for ourselves about others, but that is the source of much self-delusion. Looking at myself in the mirror, rearranging my hair, or putting on makeup is much more than a simple functional act. It is an essentialist and inferential process of self-evaluation from a public vantage point. Do I look good for others? Do I cause good or bad impressions? If bad, what can be done about it? How can I fix it? What essential character do I want to project or protect from an outside evaluation? Underlying such self-rumination and typical branding of particular features of the self that would stand for essential characteristics of who we are. I.e., self-essentialism. There is always much comparison and competition with the essential characteristics we likewise project and infer in others. E. Group and other essentialism. Moral hypocrisy and duplicity are the rule rather than just exception. Both are inseparable from self-consciousness and humans' unique concern for reputation. It is linked to face maintenance, keeping apparent moral self-unity amid obvious contradictions. Powerful examples abound, such as the fact that Hitler was a vegetarian. We are indeed moral acrobats, and this has its roots in self-consciousness, the pillar of our human nature. Self-conscious psychology leads toward obligatory existential rumination of deeply unsettling existential truths. These truths shape our moral sense, particularly what we feel and construe as right or wrong, and what we experience and reason as just or unjust. Value creation and agreement with others create the central core of social life. It is the main feature of how we manage to coexist and somehow tame that selfish beast lying in all of us. We know how to create comfort zones with selected others, which can quickly turn into effective cliques, the exclusive social bubbles where comfort zones are shared. The central questions are, why and who are those selected to share comfort zones, and who are those accepted within a particular exclusive bubble? Inversely, who are those who are rejected? Those are perennial psychological questions that need to be addressed if we want to understand our morals, in particular, our moral acrobatics. Universally, we strive toward the co-construction of shared comfort zones, what we might refer to as harmonious coexistence with some, possibly the largest possible number of people, yet always by the necessary exclusion of others, those subjectively deemed incapable or not willing to share with. The in-group. Much of our awareness about the world is the product of obligatory illusions, particularly in the moral domain. A minefield of implicit biases, obligatory blind spots, connecting the dots heuristics leading us astray from more balanced and compassionate decisions, attitudes, and judgments about others, but also about ourselves. There are markedly different levels at which we perceive and infer characteristics in people. These levels vary in depth and complexity, affecting our memories, judgments, and social attitudes. What makes us invariably switch processing levels from surface to deep and inversely is familiarity and affiliation. Whether the other is perceived as either proximal or distal about our multiple categorical spheres of comfort and alliance, same versus different group, team, membership, family, cohort, gender, race, class, you name it, all the forced contrasts that make us think the world in black and white. Parochialism, or narrowed focus, is universally irresistible, and we kid ourselves and others regarding the unity and consistency of our morals. In reality, we cannot escape holding multiple standards depending on both situation and degree of affiliation. There is indeed much delusion and blind oversights regarding what we experience as our moral consistency and how we perceive and judge the moral consistency of others, the categorical way we experience our moral self and the moral self of others. We are forced to operate along multiple, typically well compartmentalized moral standards to avoid implosion under the weight of moral inconsistencies and blatant ambiguities. We switch moral codes depending on people and situations, rarely losing the sense of our moral unity. We have grown to become very adept at juggling multiple standards. We are moral acrobats, always about to lose balance, while dancing over shaky moral montages and other bricolages, something constructed or created from a diverse range of available things. We have to come to terms with the fact that terrorists and serial killers like Ted Bundy and Ariel Castro love their parents and children. They worship their God and, in most instances, show extreme devotion to others that can lead to horrendous self-sacrifices like suicide bombings. As much as they kill, they also reciprocate affection and dedication from family members, neighbors, or close ideological allies. Pure monsters do not exist, and this is difficult, if not impossible, for us to either fathom or digest. In fact, despite our desire to hold the world in black and white, there are no pure monsters. Thus, we can own pets, professing to love animals while participating by proxy in the remote murder of billions of other creatures. In a very real way, it is this moral ambiguity that the practice of veganism highlights. The contrast of it may act as a catalyst within our psyche or soul, enabling us to examine and take individuated action to resolve the ambiguities, to achieve holism within our being, holding ourselves to a single standard, a consistent truth. This does not mean that we become inflexible and unable to respond to the actual moment. Let's take a look at the concepts of morality. Experimentation has shown that for most people certain aspects of morality are hardwired. This is demonstrated by conducting thought experiments containing moral dilemmas and collecting data on how people answer. The most basic version of the dilemma, known as bystander at the switch or switch, goes: there is a runaway trolley barreling down the railway track. Ahead, on the tracks, there are 5 people tied up and unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. You are standing some distance off in the train yard, next to a lever. If you pull this lever, the trolley will switch to a different set of tracks. However, you notice that there is one person on the side track. You have 2 and only 2 options. Do nothing, in which case the trolley will kill the 5 people on the main track. Pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will kill 1 person, which is the more ethical option. Or, more simply, what is the right thing to do? The trolley problem has been the subject of many surveys in which about 90% of respondents have chosen to kill the 1 and save the 5. If the situation is modified, where the 1 sacrificed for the 5 was a relative or romantic partner, respondents are much less likely to be willing to sacrifice the 1 life. So theoretical behavior can and is modified by human connection. But how? If we look further back, we can explore how this came to be and how it can be exploited. It concerns the acquisition of food. Individual intentionality and ability to flexibly change behavior to achieve a particular goal, usually to compete with others, characterizes individual intentionality. Chimpanzee behavior is largely spurred by this self-interested perspective, as was that of the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees, and perhaps it motivated early members of the hominin line as well. An example of this behavior occurs when chimpanzees forage for plants. A small group of animals searches together, but once they find fruit, each gathers its stash and eats separately without interacting with other group members. A similar set of relatively self-centered behaviors is exhibited when hunting prey. Joint intentionality. Some 400,000 years ago, a direct human ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis, began looking for better food sources. Hunting aurochs, or other large game, as opposed to hares, required heightened cooperation, joint intentionality, and focus on common goals. This type of teamwork contrasted with chimpanzees' every animal for itself scramble during a monkey hunt. If the Paleolithic hunter-gatherers were to survive, their foraging practices became obligate. Is not just a matter of discretion. Individuals chosen for the hunt were selected because they understood implicitly the need to cooperate and not hog the resulting spoils. A second, personal morality emerged in which it was understood that a me had to be subordinated to a we. Collective intentionality. As groups grew in size beginning 150,000 years ago, the smaller bands that made up a tribe developed a set of common practices that represented the formal beginnings of human cultures. A set of norms, conventions, and institutions grew up to define the group's goals and establish divisions of labor that set roles for each of its members, a collective intentionality that distinguished a tribe. These goals were internalized by each tribe member as an objective morality in which everyone knew immediately the difference between right and wrong as determined by the group's set of cultural practices. Thus, we see that the formation of our illusions and conclusions are based on the collective good of food gathering. This pays little attention to the collective good of the food source itself and its role in sustaining the ecosystem. To continue to survive and evolve, we must develop a sense of holism through the appreciation of the passage of energy within the whole of nature. I call this transspecies intentionality. This is where we modify our intake and consumption in balance with the natural flows of energy within the system. The benefits to ourselves and to everything we share this world with will be immense. To achieve immortality, one must first live an exceptional life. It is through the abstention from needless cruelty that we begin our journey to experience the totality of the mind-body-spirit connection, and that we have already achieved immortality through cellular consciousness. Thank you for listening, and please consider referring a friend or co-worker to listen. Change is inevitable, and you can direct the outcome through consuming less and loving more.
This has been a production of Spirit Quest Publications, a division of Anthony and Mary Holistic Health Services, LLC. All rights reserved.